Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us again for another segment on Worship Stream TV. Today, we are going to be talking about Canon's entire line of cameras and production equipment that is available for houses of worship and some of the key features that are being implemented to make that easier and easier for specifically houses of worship. Today, I am being joined with Ryan from Canon. And we are super excited to talk all things Canon. So, Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself and Canon to our viewers?
Well, thanks, James. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting us. My name is Ryan Snyder. I'm a senior technical specialist for our Cinema EOS, Pro Video, and PTZ camera solutions. And over the past few years, I've been very focused on assisting our account managers with their house of worship clients, going out on demos, and loaning equipment out, evaluating it in these house of worship spaces, because that's really the only way to make sure that our products are going to work 100%. We have a full line of imaging products. That's Canon. That's who we are. We only do imaging. So from the camera side of things to the new PTZ cameras to the lensing and even down to the mirrorless cameras and creative offerings, we really have a product for every part of a production.
And I couldn't agree more. And since we're talking about the cameras that Canon offers, let's start with the PTZ cameras. We here are big fans of PTZ cameras and live streaming in general. So why don't you introduce the Canon line of PTZ cameras and some of the features that come along with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Our PTZ lineup has really kind of exploded over the past few years. PTZs in the past had kind of been pigeonholed into this very flat looking, the depth of field per day, it's kind of surveillance kind of look to them. So when we introduced our new line of PTZs, we definitely wanted to have a higher quality to them. What's great about all of these models, the 1/2.3 inch and the 1 inch models are they are the exact same sensor block, the same lens, the same processing, and the same color profiles as our professional camcorders, like our XF605. So they present a very, very good look for creative uses at this point. Excellent low light, and that 1 inch sensor can really help you control depth of field and make it shallower than your traditional PTZs. Combining that with autofocus for face detection, combining that with very simple installation for PoE Plus or PoE Plus Plus, depending upon the model, really allows a production to get a lot more creative shots, honestly.
No, I couldn't agree more. And you touched on the 1 inch sensor, and I kind of want to just dive into that a little bit more because not only does it help with, like you said, low light and those kind of exposure settings, but it also gives a more cinematic field because as the sensor gets bigger on your cameras, your depth of field gets smaller and it looks more cinematic. It looks more broadcast. And especially when we're looking at something like the CRN 500, that is a very cost effective price point to get a 4K 30p camera with a 1 inch sensor on it. Can you talk about some of the advantages of using a 1 inch sensor?
Well, first of all, that low light capability. Anytime you're getting the pixel wells larger, you're going to be able to get a cleaner low light imagery. We see these cameras being used from everything from crowd reaction to just dynamic shots over the service where they're just moving back and forth. When you start combining those low light situations with the exciting lighting and things like that, you're getting a camera that you just can't believe that you're looking at a robotic PTZ camera. So the low light capability right there, just cleaning the image up and making it match with your larger, more expensive, cameras. It's a huge deal. And then that ability, anytime you utilize a longer lens, you're getting more compression out of it. You're getting natural, shallower depth of field, but that larger sensor just helps even more. So again, being able to separate your subject from the background and really place your audience attention where you want it is a huge advantage for that 1-inch sensor.
No, absolutely. And as we alluded to, there is more than just PTZ cameras when it comes to Canon. They, of course, have their cinema line of cameras available as well. Would you like to talk about some of the high level features on the cinema line of cameras?
Absolutely. Yeah. So our cinema cameras, we've been around almost 12 years since the original C300. These are our super large sensor, absolute high-end production cameras. Two newest models, the C400 and the C80, are actually a full frame sensor. So anytime you go up to a larger sensor, you're going to have to adjust your shooting distance, and that is going to really just obliterate any backgrounds. As far as shallow depth of field, this is really where it's at. You combine that capability with our RF mount, you're able to adapt any kind of lens from RF to EF to PL lenses on there. So it gives you a lot of creativity as far as where you can place the cameras. Of course, they all have Super 35 modes, which will accommodate our very popular Cine servo lenses. And we also have autofocus available. So, for volunteers that are not necessarily the most skilled when it comes to focusing, especially focusing a fast lens with a full frame sensor, we have a lot of capabilities as far as helping them out. Face detection, eye detection, head detection, the list goes on. So it makes it very, very usable.
We're talking about making things usable, and we're talking about, again, houses of worship tend to use a lot of volunteers. And before we move on to the autofocus, I do want to just give a little bit more focus on, no pun intended, on the last bullet on this slide, which is the XC protocol. And that is a protocol for Canon cameras that works across the line of cameras. So the PTZ cameras, the cinema cameras, the camcorders, they can all use the XC protocol. And yeah, you can't move a cinema camera with it, but you can control the color or the exposure. And if we're working with volunteers that may not know the ins and outs of how a camera works, but you can have one volunteer back in the production room that does know how to color and how to properly expose, you can have your camera operators just focus on framing while the camera controller in the production room can focus on exposure and color to make sure everything matches, like you said. So I didn't want to gloss over that, because that's a very, very useful thing that is available to your customers.
It's a huge advantage. XC protocol is really our unifying protocol that just brings everything together. And like you said, not only can somebody in the control room, have access to take over when they need to, they can take over focus. If they have a servo lens, they can even zoom that lens and reframe the shot if they need to. But we also give them access to a full array of broadcast paint and shading controls that they can access.
That's great. And we touched upon this a little bit, but I wanted to dive a little bit more into the autofocus that is available with Canons, because it's honestly just top notch. So why don't you talk about the autofocus a little bit here?
Sure. So our 1-inch PTZs, as well as our Cinema EOS cameras, they all have what's called dual pixel CMOS AF. And essentially every single photo site on the sensor is capable of phase detection autofocus. So there's no hunting. It's very quick, very accurate, and combined with the eye detection and the new subject tracking modes in the C400 and C80, it's autofocus you can absolutely rely on. However, we certainly will have people that want to manually focus. And for those operators, we have a couple of neat tools. The first is the focus position guide, which you can see here with our squirrel friend. And So essentially, what you can do with this feature, as long as you're using a servo style lens like you see on the right there, you can set up to 3 different focus markers when you are actually in focus. You set those different colored markers, and then all you have to do is rack your focus until you reach one of those points, and then your outside frame will actually light up when you have hit that focus point. So it's great for volunteers. The band starts, they need to get a shot right up front. Well, hey, just tell them go to blue or go to red, whatever you have set there. And that's gonna be an assist tool for them. The second that we have as far as assist functions is the dual pixel focus guide, which is just a box. This can actually utilize the autofocus, so you'll have a little frame around the face or eye, and as you focus, those little lines on the box will converge. And when they get to the center and light up green, you know you've got critical focus at this point. It's a great little tool that's available for most of our lenses. And again, it's just not only is it great for inexperienced operators, but experienced focus pullers as well.
As we've been saying throughout, you're just making it easier and easier to implement these and get a more cinematic, more broadcast feel into more houses of worship. So I think that's great that Canon offers all of these focus assist tools, and again, go above and beyond. One of the things that we have been talking about, and we actually were just talking with a guest from Absent, is LED walls. And our guest was talking about things like pixel pitch and refresh rate. And coming from the video walls perspective, can you give a perspective coming from the camera's perspective and what we need to focus on from the camera's point of view to make video walls look as good as they possibly can on camera?
Sure, absolutely. And I'm glad you already got the primer for the LED wall side of things, because there's a lot that goes into that. A lot more than what I can talk to you about. But yes, as you mentioned, there's elements like pixel pitch, which is how big the actual pixels will be. If they're too small, they might not have the right amount of brightness. The smaller the pitch you go, the better, but it also drives up the cost. Same thing with the processing and the refresh rate. Faster is better, but as we know, budgets are a thing. So there's always a trade-off, and you want to get the best possible bang for the buck there. When it comes to cameras shooting, any one of these can affect the image, and so if you have a pixel pitch that's too large, you can start introducing moire. Well, we talked about being able to minimize that with shallow depth of field. If you are shooting with a fast lens and you open that thing up as wide as it can go, move your talon out a little bit from the wall, then that's going to have a big effect on reducing any kind of moire that you might see. But the main thing that we see when we're doing demos is the refresh rate not matching. Ideally, you want the frequency of the capture device, the camera, that electronic shutter, you want it to be hitting exactly when the wall has refreshed properly, so you're getting a full scan. When the frequency is mismatched, what can happen is you get anything from light bands to really dark bands across the screen that can be apparent. You can also get flicker. And it's really, a combination of all of these things. It's the refresh rate not being fast enough. It could be, due to the pulse width modulation of the wall, just being out of time. And so what we have come up with is a way to eliminate that. And so we call this clear scan shutter mode. Essentially, you take the shutter menu and you switch the cameras into clear scan. And now, instead of a shutter speed that you'd be operating on, now you can adjust the actual frequency of the electronic shutter. So essentially what you're doing is tricking the camera into, only capturing the good frames. And it's very, very effective in most cases. We have this available on all of our PTZ cameras. We have it available on all of our Cinema EOS cameras, and it's also on our little portable XF605 Pro camcorder.
And we're talking again about making things as easy as we can for houses of worship. And this is something that you guys have implemented into a wide range of your cameras to make it easier. Another thing that I want to talk about just before we go into a little bit of a demo here is something that all of the Canon PTZ cameras offer that also will help with a little bit of the LED walls is all of the PTZ cameras have a wide color range, or HDR on some of the higher end ones as well. And that will help with exposure settings too, because if you have a bright screen behind you, sometimes it can get washed out and then your talent isn't properly exposed. Now they're underexposed. But if you have a wider color range, you have a greater chance of having both of them being properly exposed. Do you want to talk about that for a minute before we move on to this demo real quick?
Yeah, 100%. In the cinema side of things, I've always been a big proponent of better pixels and not more pixels. And that's what HDR really provides you is, brighter brights, darker darks, and everything in between. And so if you have the ability to do an HDR LED wall, we have the ability to match up with that as far as color gamuts. Our higher end PTZs and all of our cinema EOS and Pro video cameras have both HLG as well as PQ custom picture styles. So you're right at home right off the bat with an HDR production. And again, when shooting, certain things, it'll be too bright or too dark. Our HDR outputs actually have the ability to pad that by a certain amount of dB. So if it is too bright, you can lower the output to match a better exposure for your wall.
And again, that's just great that it comes standard with the Canon cameras. And now even going on a little bit more of a tangent here with NDI6 being able to transmit some flavors of HDR, it's just a match that works so well together. Now, I believe that you have the ability to kind of show us a little bit of how this clear scan would actually work when shooting at a monitor. So we'll bring you up full screen and we'll let you do that demo real quick.
Very cool. So as far as clear scan, the toughest part about implementing it is actually finding the right frequency. You have to manually check that. So something that we've come out with on our C400 and C80 cinema EOS cameras is the ability to do an auto clear scan where the camera will actually read the frequency of the wall. And in my experience, this has worked very, very well in almost every situation I've used. In the times it didn't, I've done an auto clear scan reading and only had to adjust a few hundredths of hertz in either direction in order to really clean up every bit of flicker. So I just wanted to demonstrate this using my home PC monitor. It is a big curved thing, so it's the closest thing that I can come to showing an LED wall here. But all you have to do in order to utilize this function is go into your camera menu and you'll see the auto clear scan setting. I'll back out of this for 1 second. If you notice down in the lower right hand, because I'm in 60p, I've got the setting already at a 59.99 hertz. Now I know this monitor is actually set at 100 hertz. It's not the greatest, so it's not at 120, but I know that this is set at 100. So I'm just going to show you that the camera is actually able to read this, and we'll do an auto clear scan. It tells you don't move the camera while you're doing this, and we're going to let the camera figure out what's going on. It's going to take a couple different readings, and look at that. Right there comes up 100 hertz flicker detected. Do you want to change the clear scan setting? We say okay, and now it locks that setting into 99 hertz. So this is, it just takes the guesswork out of it. Like I said, 90% of situations I've run into, it works right off the bat. So just, you talk about making it easy. That's how we make it easy.
And I was literally just going to say that too, again, making it as easy as possible for the end user. You don't have to do any guesswork. You turn on the auto clear scan and it will tell you what the frame rate of the monitor is. And even if you are a couple hertz off, if you don't know the technical reasons, it's going to look a lot better than what it was beforehand if you were just guessing.
Right.
Big kudos to Canon for implementing that in these cameras. Now, there's another thing that we want to talk about, which is a feature with some of the Canon cameras as well, and that is the ability to quickly, with the press of a button, change the frame rate and the output and frame rate of your camera. Can you talk about some of the benefits of that, and then we'll talk about how to implement that?
Yeah, like I said, in the past few years, we've been, going out and doing these demos. We've learned a lot, and we've incorporated, obviously, these kind of features to help out with these productions. The biggest learning lesson for me, as somebody coming from cinema and broadcast, is that there is a trend in the house of worship side of things where they want to be able to change the frame rate during the actual service, which is unheard of when you're talking broadcast. So the reason for this is they want to use 60p as close to real life as possible for the actual message. They want their congregation to feel, if they're watching on iMag, if they're watching streaming, they want to feel like they're there and they're in the presence. However, when the worship portion comes up, the band comes up, the music starts, that's when they want to get that more cinematic type of cadence to the motion. They want a little bit more motion blur. They want a little bit of that film-like break from reality to really punctuate the creativeness of that. And so they want to be able to do that fast on the fly. The issue with doing that, at least in the broadcast side of things, is all of these cameras are connected to a switcher, and they hopefully are all gen locked together. If you change the actual frame rate, well, there's going to be glitches. There's going to be it's going to interrupt the actual feed. So they must be able to do this seamlessly. And so what we've done is we've incorporated basically called a pull down feature. And the camera remains in 60 frames per second. However, when you want to switch over, we activate this option in the menu. It's that output 60 to 6024 or 30. And you have the option to do either. And the video output is now going to appear to be in that lower frame rate. So essentially, we're just throwing away either 30 frames or throwing away either 36 frames out of that 60 frame stream. So there's no interruption whatsoever to the switcher. The switcher still sees it as 60p, and you get the benefit of being able to switch back and forth at will.
And we're talking about being able to do that at will. And I kind of skipped ahead a little bit here.
Yeah.
You have the ability to show just how easy this is to do, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm going to
we'll bring you up full screen again, and then you can show us.
Right. So you can see that my on-screen display here, you see how well that face detection is working as well. So up in the, you can see here, our base frame rate is at 60p. And so I'm giving you 60p. However, if you look right next to the sensor size here, Super 35, when I activate this, will be essentially in 24. And so I'm going to have a little bit of motion going on, and I'm going to activate that pull down now. And you should be able to see that there is definitely a change in that cadence in that motion. So I'll take it off.
I can definitely see it. Yep.
Back to 60. And I'm just going to activate that assignable button one more time. And we have that 24. So seamless switching, and you have basically two different looks out of the single camera position.
I think that is an excellent feature that, again, Canon offers. You've said this a few times today. You take feedback from customers and you implement it in with new updates, new features, and I think that is really, really great. I want to say thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us today to talk about Canon's entire range of cameras, as well as some of these new features that are available for specifically houses of worship. One thing that we always like to do is we like to give our guests the final word. So if there's anything that you would like to say, the floor is yours.
Well, Dave, just thank you so much for having Canon and myself on here. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I really enjoy working with our House of Worship clients. It's really fun to help them figure out new and creative shots in order to, obviously engage their congregation and reach out to new members of the community. Really just having a great time here. And if you have any questions about products, obviously contact you. And really look forward to seeing everybody out in the field.
All right. Thank you again to all of our viewers. If you do have any questions, feel free to give us a call and we will answer as many as we can. And if we don't know the answer, we'll get someone like Ryan involved to get the answer for you. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and stay tuned for some more great content coming up soon. Thank you.